Shove it, man!
Here on the Shove It Show, we like to try and delve a bit deeper than the average YouTube wrestling channel. We dig through a lot of crap here, all to try and bring you the best, fresh content for the Shove It squad. This time we're going to look at the TNA wrestlers who you may or may not know wrestled matches for the WWE. I had a great time making this video, to be honest. It was a lot more fun than expected. I'm going to try and make it a bit more interesting over the standard list. By now, I'm sure the entire internet knows that Samoa Joe had a tryout in 2001 and that AJ Styles had a tryout also. So let me see if I can try and hit any of you with a brick and blow your mind. Before we start, just a quick reminder to join us as we travel to the Graceland of 100k subscribers. And if you say that you're not, you're just a bunch of liars. And of course, let me know if I've missed anyone out. I'm sure I did somewhere. Let's do it. Chris Harris in 1996. Chris wrestled 2 matches in 1996 on WWF Superstars. Damn, I had no idea this guy had been wrestling for so long before TNA. It wasn't exactly a dominant run for young Chris Harris in the WWF, but it was still a lot better than that time he was Braden Walker. He suffered 2 convincing losses to both members of the future APA. Back then, Bradshaw also had a gimmick that he was a hawk. He got completely destroyed and wasn't able to hit much more than a dropkick. Harris was only 21 years of age at this point, and I'm sure he was full of optimism for his trade at the time. But I'm not done with the strange factoids here. After this, he would wrestle around 14 matches on the WCW TV show. But if that ain't strange enough, Chris Harris resurfaced on WWF Jacked, which was a WWFC show in 2001. Damn, Chris Harris in WWF in 2001. I had no idea. It was nothing to write home about, a loss to X Factor of all people. They couldn't even get his name right, so thanks for coming, Rob Harris. As you may or not be able to tell, he wasn't signed, unlike in WCW, and this was just a one-off. Hernandez in 2000 and 2001. The Powerman Pinelli X was always hailed as a potential main eventer in TNA, but he never seemed to quite make it to that level, despite being one of Dixie Carter's favourite wrestlers. Hernandez appeared twice on Jack looking pretty trim, and he was introduced under his real name, Sean Hernandez. Or should I say, he looked jacked. Despite his size, he still didn't look very impressive, despite being in there with the tiny Crash Holly. I'm not quite sure why that was, to be honest. His second match really piqued my interest though. Hernandez versus fucking Haku. 2 guys who looked like they could tear most goons apart. The highlight of this one was a possibly botched back body drop, which looked awesome. Haku won the match with the Tongan Death Grip, and that was the last of Hernandez in the WWE, and he went on to sign for TNA in 2003. The Flying Elvises in 2001. What? I don't like to dwell too much on dark matches, because if you open the door to dark matches, you're getting into the Dups territory, where basically everyone and their dog, old Margaret Twopence, basically any wrestler in the world, they had a dark match. This is a match that wasn't televised, but it still happened. I thought this one was interesting from Jacked in 2001 though, and the footage exists, so I'm going to include it. The Flying Elvises were a big part of the early days of TNA, comprising of 3 men, 2 of which are here, and Jimmy Yang. But did you know Sonny Siaki and Jorge Estrada faced off in the dark match in 2001? Needless to say, it wasn't very good apparently, lots of botches and the crowd booed them out the building. It was probably for the best, otherwise we wouldn't have got the Sonny Siaki we all know and love telling people not to look at his ass. AJ Styles would face his trainer Rick Michaels in the following matchup, in a battle which was received much better by the fans that night. The SATs in 2003 and 2005. Here are 2 guys I really wasn't expecting to mention in this video. You know, I really don't like these SAT guys. They have 0 personality and they look exactly the same. Are they twins? All jokes aside, the Maximos, or the SATs as they were known in TNA, are an exciting part of the Asylum days. Personality aside, they were innovators for the wrestling styles of today. So you can see why it was quite the surprise for this Hawk that the Maximos made 3 televised appearances on Velocity. They had a non-title tag match against the Bashams, and in my opinion they struggled with having to wrestle the WWE style. This was completely different to any TNA SAT match I'd ever seen, where they flipped and flew everywhere. I found it interesting that Amazing Red, their cousin, was actually discussed on commentary. The fact that these guys wrestled on TV for the Fed, but spoiler, Amazing Red will not be making this list, is a travesty. Anyway, they were also completely destroyed in a handicap match by the Big Show. The best bit was the announcer getting their names wrong. He called them Joe and Joel Maximo. I barely know their names either, to be fair. They might as well both be called Joe. Anyway, all of this happened after their TNA Asylum run, and then it was all downhill from here. A second loss to the Bashams was their final Velocity appearance. Slash in 2000. I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent here, I'm sorry. This creepy looking guy was deceptively good in the ring. It's crazy how many places he wrestled throughout the years. In fact, this technically isn't the first time that he was in the WWE, but it was under a completely different gimmick. He first had a rapping gimmick with JC Ice and he was Wolfie D, PG-13. Somehow these guys were part of the early days of the Nation of Domination. Slash actually wrote their entrance song and they rapped it on the way to the ring. It didn't go well for them. Then he went to ECW for a cup of coffee, and then, because apparently they hadn't had enough quick cups of coffee, PG-13 wrestled in WCW as well. Slash's partner JCI/Jamie Dundee looked to be completely out of it in 99% of the matches. It can't have been easy for Slash having to carry this guy. On that statement, everything just seemed to be better on drugs, didn't it? But this might be an example of that statement being completely wrong. So after WCW, he ended up in the TNA asylum with Father James Mitchell in the New Church. But between that and his WCW run, he appeared on Jack twice in 2000, although Jamie Dundee didn't make it this time. He would no longer have a rapping gimmick, and now he was a monster, and he was teamed up with Kevin Thorne, who was going under the name Seven. No, not the one you're all thinking of. I'm surprised this name was used again so soon after the failed Dustin Runnels experiment in WCW. Needless to say, these two at least looked like the sort of people who'd be hanging around together. Anyway, this was not your typical squash match as they faced off against Too Cool. Slash got to show lots of his pretty unique offense. Grandmaster Sexay put Seven away with the hip-hop drop. Slash also had a singles match on Jack towards the end of 2000 against Get Rowdy K Quick. Slash isn't a fan of Get Rowdy either, and he tries a sneak attack on Quick during his rap. Unfortunately, the Fed didn't try to get him over as a freaky looking monster the way TNA did, and they hardly even mentioned what he looked like. One thing that this K-Quick match taught me though is that I finally learned what his front suplex finisher is called. The Hat Rack Crack. Shut up or I'll give you a smack. Luckily for Slash, he wouldn't have to wait too long before the upstart company TNA gave him a full-time gig. I got carried away there, I have to admit, I'm sorry. I never get to talk about this guy much, but I think he had a pretty interesting run in wrestling. Cassidy OReilly, 2002 and 2007. Or as he's better known to you guys, the depressed version of Shane Douglas. He actually wrestled 6 TV matches for WCW, much like much of the early TNA talent. But he's probably best known for his tag team with Chase Stevens, the Hot Shots, who squeezed their junk as part of their early TNA gimmick. Needless to say, no one was believing it. He can't have been exclusively signed to TNA though, because towards the end of 2002 he appeared on Sunday Night Heat. Cassidy took on his hero Raven. Strangely, he wore his Hot Shots gear, but he didn't squeeze his junk. He didn't really get any offense in, and Raven put away Cassidy OReilly with the Raven effect. But hold on, that ain't all. Cassidy went back to TNA and wrestled there for the next 4 years before leaving again. This time he managed to get on WWE ECW in 2006. In an ex-TNA vs ex-TNA matchup, Monty Brown took on the depressed version of Shane Douglas. It's funny to hear the crowd chanting TNA on a WWE programme. This was also Monty Brown's WWE debut, where he's known as Marcus Corvon. He puts Cassidy away with the pounce, but it was all downhill for Cassidy from here. He was pretty decent in the ring of TNA, but he didn't get to show anything in the WWE. Chase Stevens, 2002 and 2008. Hold your hawks though, you haven't heard the last of the Hot Shots in this video, because his partner called Chase Stevens also made it onto WWE programming. Around this time that Cassidy took a brief hiatus during the TNA Asylum days, Chase did the same, rocking up on Velocity in 2002. It was just the most random tag match of all time, as he was paired up with Bully Douglas.
I don't know who the hell he is, but he ain't from Kingston Seymour, I tell you that.
And they took on Reverend Devon and Farouk. He got completely dominated by Big Farouk. He did manage to get a 1.5 count on the Reverend before being completely beheaded. Farouk tried to pin him using his head. Never seen that one before. Well, not since the Al Snow head gimmick anyway. He lost to the Devon flying headbutt, and with the condition of Devon's forehead, I don't think it's a good idea for him to keep using head-related offense. His job with TNA was still open, and he went back there and continued to be a hotshot. Then he formed another tag team with Andy Douglas, the Naturals. He did alright for himself, to be fair. He was consistently all over the TNA shows for the first 5 years. But then in 2007, in a moment of madness, as the Naturals finished up with TNA, they wrestled a match on SmackDown, which is more than most people on this list managed. It was a 3-on-1 handicap match, The Big Show versus Chase Stevens, Andy Douglas and Luke Hawx. Alright, calm down guys, it's apparently Hawks with an X on the end. Very gangster. Second wrestler with a Hawk gimmick on this video today. I'm having a field day today. Show completely destroyed the Naturals and hits the final cut on Andy Douglas. The Hawk is choked out and pushed out the ring, and Andy Douglas follows him. Then he tells Chase Stevens, "Shut up or I'll smack you one," and it's over. It wasn't over for Chase though, because a year later he was on the ECW brand taking on Jack Swagger in his second WWE match. Chase got squashed, but it was a very entertaining squash. Chase still wasn't done though, because he was back the following week in a losing effort against Mike Knox. Again, Chase had a really fun squash match, and he made his opponent look good. I would have hired him based on these showings. It wasn't to be though, and just like his former partner, TNA was also done with him. David Young, 2000 and 2001. Let me check that script, that can't be right. Jesus Christ, another one I was not expecting to see on here. I admit on my TNA series I probably go too hard on this guy. He hasn't actually done anything wrong, but where's the entertainment in that? He still looks like an overweight cab driver to me. Someone in the WWE obviously didn't think that, because prior to TNA starting up, the Master of the Spinebuster had 2 matches on Jacked. The first one was against Funaki. He actually got to snap off a really nice Hurricanrana, which got a really good reaction from the fans. David is a perfectly solid wrestler, and some wrestlers don't need a gimmick, but he certainly needed one. What's weird is that he was always just a guy for his time in TNA. They should have booked him as a cab driver desperate to do anything to make some money. He could have done things that would disgust the fans with how low he'd go to make money. He could be the prostitute of the wrestling business. And no, Sunny didn't have that gimmick, nobody paid her. David Young had a really good match with Funaki, which is officially the nicest thing I've ever said about the guy. But he wasn't done because he had a second match as he main event Jacked against the one Billy Gunn. This one was a year later, and unfortunately Young had let himself go a bit at this point. I can imagine the horror on Vince McMahon's face watching backstage. David had another good match against the One, losing to the one and only. If this guy had a gimmick, I promise he would have gone further in wrestling, because he was solid in the ring. He did okay for himself in TNA in the end, and he had a fairly long career on the independent scene. Dray 3000 in the year 2007. It keeps getting more bizarre around here. I've barely spoke about this X-Division wrestler called Dray 3000, but he was actually on TV quite a lot for TNA. He was given the gimmick because he apparently closely resembles Andre 3000 from Outkast. He finished up with TNA in 2004, but by 2007 something quite remarkable had happened. Okay, it wasn't that amazing. I'm overstating this a bit. But guess who wrestled a match on SmackDown? He wasn't doing the Outkast gimmick though. So it's MVP, who is at the height of his WWE run here. He issues an open challenge to the Ethiopian heavyweight champion. Oh god, that's embarrassing. Why has he got dirt all over him just because he's African? Sort of racist, isn't it? He has a spear. Oh god, living up to stereotypes here. I'm shocked this is never talked about. Then MVP beats him like a jabroni and he doesn't get to show anything. Let's move on quickly from this one. I feel like I need to wash my eyes out. Quite vile to portray an Ethiopian in this way. Johnny Devine, 2005. Johnny Devine was the Hamburglar in TNA, but pause for a moment. I have to hold my hands up. I couldn't find the footage of him where he took on Tyson Tonko. I spent like an hour looking for the footage, and then I had to hit myself with a brick. And I thought, hang on a minute, what the hell am I doing here? Wasting time trying to find footage of Johnny Devine as JP Parsonage. It just wasn't worth my time. But it happened, so you'll have to take my word for it. Johnny Devine can shove it. Scott Damore, 1995. Remember the specky, mouthy leader of Team Canada, Scott Damore? Well, did you know he was actually a wrestler in the early days? He was mainly in the WCW as a jobber in the early days, but he also did some jobs in the WWE, including an appearance on Monday Night Raw, challenging for the tag titles. His partner looked like a chubby Bobby Roode. Scott has a mullet and is also rather heavy set, with a back as hairy as Albert's. The Smoking Guns put away his partner with the Sidewinder. He had 7 TV matches, so what else happened? He faced Ahmed Johnson just after he had slammed Yokozuna. Scott should be scared because he doesn't quite have the girth of the Samoan. Johnson hits him with the Pearl River Plunge to perfection. Another match is Scott Damore versus Hawk Bradshaw, 3 times now. Bradshaw flattens him with a clothesline from hell pretty quickly. Bradshaw brands him. I completely forgot this gimmick ever happened. Not much to see from an offensive point. He wasn't much to see in the ring. His strength definitely lay with the mic work. A1, 2004. One guy I've consistently told the Shove It squad sucks is A1, and EA sucks. So I guess it's time to stop telling you and start showing you. Before he became the muscle for Team Canada in TNA, he had 2 matches with the WWE. The first was against Viscera. This isn't going to go well. So it's a big clumsy muscle guy against a big clumsy obese Viscera. Well, nothing actually went wrong, apart from A1's elbow pad falling off, and he lost without landing a punch. His second appearance came on Velocity. It was Luther Reigns and Mark Jindrak versus him and Roy McAllister, aka Drew McIntyre Jr., who looks more like Stone Cold Jr. here. Jindrak gives A1 one of the hardest slaps to the face I think I've ever seen. Luther Reigns then shoves A1 down as he collapses on the mat. They boot McAllister out the ring and then they get him back in and make the cover, and A1 just stands on the apron like a complete moron whilst the pin happens. Am I supposed to be doing something? Then they punk him out. Thanks for coming, A1. The only way I can describe A1 is a cross between Wes Briscoe and Braden Walker. Eric Young, 2003. Yes, before you all get on your keyboards and start typing, we all know Eric Young wound up in the WWE eventually. But did you know he had 3 matches in 2003? One of them before his TNA debut. Even stranger is who he would be teaming up with on Velocity. It's Eric Young and Bobby Roode taking on the FBI. The commentary team keep laughing at Eric and calling him Sting's little brother. Roode manages to get a 2 count, or was it a rope break? I'm not sure. Eric also manages to get a 2 count. It's good to see the jobbers getting in some offense for a change. The FBI work on Eric forever, but he refuses to quit and makes the hot tag to B. Roode. He does quite well until he gets booted in the back of the head. Next up for the young man was Val Venus on Heat. Young was already incredibly charismatic in 2003. I'm shocked WWE didn't sign him based on this evidence. After taking Eric Young a bit lightly, Venus shuts him down with a spinebuster and ends the match with a money shot. The crowd enjoyed this one and so did I. The final appearance for Eric Young was against Sean O'Haire, who makes the ladies care. Interestingly, he's introduced to Showtime Eric Young, even this far back. O'Haire thinks he's got it won with a clothesline, but EY kicks out. It doesn't last much longer as Sean O'Haire hits the Widowmaker, but as I said, I'm surprised Eric Young didn't get signed and spent so much time in TNA. For a company that says it's not wrestling, it's sports entertainment, you'd have think EY would have ticked the boxes. So conveniently following on from that one is Bobby Roode, who made appearances in 2001 to 2003. Roode must have been really close to getting signed as he had 13 matches on TV. I'm not going to go through them all though, because otherwise we'll be entering Ring of the Hawk territory, and we don't do B-shows, brother. Needless to say, he didn't win a single match, which isn't that surprising for a jobber. Instead, let's watch this one from 2001 against Perry Saturn, just because it's 2 guys you wouldn't expect to see having a match. Oh god, Rudy Roode. The Rock would have a field day with this guy. Rudy Roode does manage to take Saturn down and gives him a flapjack. Not really a whole lot else happens though, as Saturn drops him off the ropes and hits a super kick that looks nicer than 99% of guys nowadays. Saturn starts suplexing him all over the place, but he misses a moonsault, and Rudy Roode comes back into this one. This actually is an excellent match. I'm glad I trust my Hawk intuition here and chose this one. Saturn wins with a Death Valley driver. And finally, Christopher Daniels, 1998 to 2001. Okay, some of you may already know about this one. You know the story behind him almost being named as the Howard Power behind the Ministry of Darkness, so someone behind the scenes obviously thought highly of him. I honestly had no idea CD wrestled as much as this on TV under the WWF banner. You might even go as far to say he was a regular on Shotgun Saturday Night throughout 1998. Let's see what he was bringing to the table. Daniels never actually made it onto the main WWE show, but he did later on in WCW. I never knew he was called the Fallen Angel even this far back. Okay, you can tell he's a lot more polished and less green than the other guys we've seen in this video. Daniels is even hitting the Angel's wings and challenging for the light heavyweight title. The crowd really enjoy it, but I can't get over his look. It's terrible. He looks like a predator. We actually get a promo which is incredibly rare in this video. For some reason he's smoking and the big boss man has to tell him off. Okay, I lied, it's not much of a promo, but it's the best I could find in this video. Boss man scares him so much that his hairline ran down the back of his ass.
What is that in your mouth? What is that in your mouth, huh? What the hell this is? No smoking!
Sorry.
What the hell is this?
I'm just enjoying the cigar.
Well, you ain't enjoying it in this building anymore. Bottom line is, you're getting the hell out of here.
Daniels actually challenged a second time for the light heavyweight title against Jerry Lynn. Wow, now it feels like I'm watching an episode of TNA here. Daniels definitely had the best showing out of all of these guys. All of his matches were highly competitive and he had many chances to win. Jerry Lynn is using the Tornado DDT as a finish here at this point, and he puts CD away. Let's be honest, if Jerry Lynn wasn't able to do much on the main roster, Daniels never stood a chance at this time. Daniels did win some matches, but they were dark matches, so I can't show you, so shove it. He also spent some time in WCW, but nobody cares about that. That's it then for the day. Let me know if I missed anyone out and give me a shout, but not much bass or I'll punch you in the face.